What an incredible group we have here at My Daily Choice. Global team doing global things. And listen, if you haven't taken a minute yet before we get started, I turn this call over to the legend, Mr. Brian Tracy. I want y'all to get a pen, a piece of paper, and get ready to take some notes. I had the opportunity 5 or 6 days ago to have a phone conversation with Mr. Tracy. And he told me all the things he's excited to share about not just our industry, but about life in general, how to capitalize on crisis, what you can do immediately right now to jumpstart your business. And look, what a great time it is. We're 39 days away from convention right now, family, 39 days. And what an honor it is to have a gentleman like Mr. Brian Tracy on this call with us and give us all the pointers to get jump started going into convention. And last call, I want to hear from everybody out there where you're calling in from. I can see the chat. Namibia, South Africa, Namibia, Africa. What's up, everybody? So everybody saying hi. Chris Gilbert, Arizona. Awesome. Johannesburg, Minnesota. I mean, we are Pittsburgh. We're everywhere. Mr. Tracy, you got a global audience today, and I can't wait for them to hear from you because I talked to you for 30 or 40 minutes, and a lot of it was business. Just when the knowledge that comes out of your mouth just in a regular conversation just floors me. So I can't wait to see what it is when you actually go full training mode here and you share it with everybody here at My Daily Choice. So what I'm going to do, family, is everybody's jumping on. We are 3 minutes past the hour. I want to make sure you get a full hour with Mr. Tracy. He's got a lot of stuff prepared for you. I'm going to kick this call over to Brian Tracy and let him do his thing for the next almost hour here. So family in the chat, please give a huge shout out and a welcome to Mr. Brian Tracy, world-renowned author, speaker, done incredible things in the network marketing industry, trained for hundreds of network marketing companies. And what an awesome pleasure it is to be with you this afternoon, Mr. Tracy. I'm going to kick this call over to you now, sir, and let you take over.
Thank you so much. My goal in our time together is to show our friends how to double and triple their income in the weeks and months ahead. Somebody's going to do it, and it might as well be you. A lot of people have already done it in the last few months, and they have done it by changing, sometimes dramatically, what they were doing in the past. About 5 years ago, I stumbled across a subject which has sort of been there in business, and it's called business model innovation. And I stumbled across it, picked it up and looked at it, and I thought, OMG, this is one of the greatest subjects of all. And what it says is that as we go through our business life, the business model that works changes. And the natural tendency of human beings is to keep going back to what they were doing in the past that's not working. But what we have to do is we have to stand back and say, do I need to change my business model? Now, your business model, what I found, is your profit model. So how do you earn profits? How do you increase your income? And what I found, I thought there was 3 or 4 different business models. There's actually 55 different business models. And there are about 10 different parts of a business model, very much like a recipe for a special dish in the kitchen. And if one of those pieces or parts of the business model is wrong or is out or is misproportioned, it can cause the whole dish to taste terrible. So what you have to do is you always have to be standing back and looking at your business model, and you always have to be open to the possibility that you could be wrong. This is the mark of the superior person, is they're always open to the possibility. That doesn't mean that you are wrong. It just means that you could be. If you could be, it dramatically expands your vision of the world and what is possible. So if you imagine, like in every business starts off with a business model, and it starts to grow, and then it flattens out. Sometimes it declines. Sometimes it goes broke. And that's because what is required has changed. And today, with our coronavirus, so many things have changed. And that what was working 6 months ago may not work at all today. Or there's maybe just 1 or 2 things that you need to change. So I want to talk about these things. And what I want to do is I want to start off by asking this question. What is the highest paid, most important work that you do? This is a bit of a trick question because nobody really knows the answer. What's the highest paid work that you do? And you'll think of this or that or something else. But the answer is thinking. Thinking is the most important and the highest paid work that you do, because the quality of your thinking determines the quality of your decisions. The quality of your decisions determines the quality of your your actions. The quality of your actions determines the quality of your results. And in our business, results are everything. There's an enormous number of people. We take that 80-20 rule. The bottom 80% of people think it's basically you trade your hours for pay. That's all. But the top 20% of people trade their results for money. And so your job is to get more and better results continually. So your business model is your profit model. Is how do you increase your profits? How do you do more, better, different things so that you make more money? Now, a second thing that I've learned is that everybody should be focused on becoming financially independent as a focal point, a central point of their life. Very much like a magnifying glass, focusing on a single place. Because if you don't focus on becoming financially independent, it will never happen. Financial independence is a rare thing. Lots of people are doing it. In America today, we have 30 million millionaires. And of those millionaires, 87% are self-made. Same as billionaires. 87% of billionaires are self-made. That means they started with nothing early in life, limited background, and even if they went to college or university, basically they started with nothing and they earned it from the bottom all the way up. And so thinking is the most important thing that you do. And thinking means that you think better about who you are and what you're doing. And this is something that cannot be left to chance. So how do you think? Well, I'll talk about this in a couple of seconds. One of the most important things that I learned is the importance of goal setting. And goal setting is important because it forces you to think and to focus with great intensity on exactly what you can do to achieve your most important goals. Surprise, surprise, Chris, only 3% of adults have written goals. If you ask a classroom of people, how many people here have goals? Everybody raise their hand. Okay, bring your goals up here and show me your goals so I can just take a look at them and we can compare how well you're doing. And all the hands go back down again. Oh, they say, well, I have goals, but what they have really is not goals. They have wishes and they have hopes and they have fantasies and they have dreams. I call these cigarette smoke goals. Just like a cigarette smoke in a large room, it just dissipates and disappears. It has no energy behind it. It has no power. So I say an unwritten goal is a goal with no energy behind it. And I say it's very much like a cartridge in a pistol with no powder. You just shoot blanks all the time. And the great majority of people are shooting blanks. I'll often tell people, I'll ask my audiences, how many people here want to double their income? And of course, everybody will raise their hand. And I'll say, all right, I'm going to give you 7 different ways to double your income or more in the time that we spend together. I say, would that be good use of our time together? And these are 1 and 2 day seminars. And everybody agrees. And I say, okay, well, let's get on with our seminar, whether it's business or sales, and I'll sort of give you some of these ideas as we go along. And everybody goes, oh, because they want to double their income now. And I say, well, okay, well, if you'd like to double your income immediately, let me give you a very simple technique. It's guaranteed to work. It works everywhere at all times, under all situations, with all products and services, and in all markets, including the coronavirus market. And here it is. According to research going back to 1928, and I read about 3 hours a day. I'm extremely well informed. I've read, you see behind me, all these books are double packed so that there's 2 levels of shelves, and they go up, they go down and sideways and out into my other rooms. And I've read about 6,000 books, and most of the books are on how to get better results, whether it's marketing or sales or strategic planning or goal setting. It's all on how to get more and better results. Because if you don't study the subject and then apply what you learn, it's not going to happen. As Chris will tell you, it's not going to happen by accident. It happens because you have to work your ass off for a long, long time. And even then, there's no guarantees because you can get to the point like last December when we had the boomingest economy in the history of the world, and wham, we're set back on our heels and all bets are off. So anyway, I say, all right, and let's say I'm speaking to a sales audience. This is where I'll use this little story. I say, all right, so in 1928, they did a study and they asked salespeople right across the country in all industries, how many new prospects do you speak to each day? And the answer in 1928 was 2. And now it's interesting. I've worked with big companies that are profitable and growing, and the people make a lot of money. And the one difference between them and others is that they keep track of all their calls. They write it down, write it down, write it down. I'm obsessed with writing it down. So if I were to ask you, tell me, Chris, how many new people did you speak to 3 months and 2 days ago? And you could say, oh, pull out your computer, pull out your workbook, and you'd say, I spoke to 4 new people. And these are the names, these are the addresses, these are the results of the conversation. In other words, you've got it written down and you can always refer to it. And there's a rule. It's one of the great laws. It's called the Hawthorne Principle. And it says that focusing on any number improves that number. So if you say, all right, my whole success in life is determined by the number of new people that I introduce to my daily choices each day. All right. And so how many am I doing today? Well, probably if you're like most people, you don't really know. You guess at it. So let's just say, let's give you a pass and let's say you're the average. You're talking to 2 new people per day. All right. Now, how do you double your income? You ready? You already know the answer, don't you? It's so simple. You should be taken outside and beaten with a stick. The answer is, instead of talking to 2 new people each day, talk to 4. Now, I didn't graduate from high school, and I worked at laboring jobs for several years, and I slept in my car, and I slept next to my car in the summertime. And I worked at laboring jobs of all kinds. When I was 23 years old, I was working as a laborer, what we call a farm laborer. I was working on the harvest and sleeping on the hay in the farmer's barn, getting up at 5 a.m. and when it was pitch black so I could eat with the farmer's family and be out into the field by the first light. And this is where I was at 23. And I had done a lot of stuff by the age of 23. But working as a farm laborer during the harvest is not a good place to be if you have plans and goals for yourself. And what happened to me then, because it was now the winter and I couldn't get a job on a farm. And so I got a job in sales. And this was an incredible experience because I got the 3-part sales training program. Here's your cards. Here's your brochures. There's the door. And so I went out and knocked on doors. And they told me, don't worry about making sales. Just get rejections. Because the more rejections you get, the more sales you'll make. So I would actually run from place to place, collecting rejections. However, that's not the way it works. And at the end of the day, I would really run from place to place. I made an average of 70 calls per day in my first year. I made something like 20,000 calls and got rejected about 20,000 times. I made just enough to stay alive. And then one day I noticed that there was one guy, I still remember, his name was Pete, and he was very casual and relaxed and easygoing. And I'd start at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. I'd make my first call at 8 a.m. when people came to work. I'd call all day long until people went home. And then I'd go out and I'd work in the neighborhoods and I'd call on homes and apartments. And I'd work until 9:30, 10 o'clock. My rule then was if the light was on, I would knock. And I still remember to this day, I made my first sale. And I started with this sales organization. I made the first sale on the 31st day at 9:30 at night. It was the last call of the last day. They say the very best sales in life are made at the end of the longest street, at the end of the longest day, on the very last person you call on. And anybody who's been in sales for any period of time can relate to that. It's just pushing yourself one more call, just one more call. And so what I did is I just made one more call and I made my sale and it changed my spirits. And then, but anyway, I went and I asked Pete, I said, Pete, and Pete would roll into the office around 9 or 9:30. He'd go out and make a couple of sales. He'd come back and hang around the office. Then he'd go out for lunch with a prospect or a customer. And then he'd go out and make a couple of sales in the afternoon. And he'd finish at about 5. And he was unmarried like me. But he had a pocket full of money that would choke a horse. And he went out to nice restaurants, he went out with nice girls. And Pete would, and I still remember when Pete would stand at the door and he'd say, anybody want to go for lunch? I would run because I know if I went for lunch, Pete would pay. And I couldn't pay. Anyway, so I asked him, I said, Pete, what are you doing differently from me? And this was the turning point in my life. It changed my life forever. And he said, well, show me your sales presentation. I'll critique it for you. I said, well, I'd heard about a sales presentation, but I'd never seen one before. I said, I don't have a sales presentation. And he said, well, what do you say when you meet a prospect? Oh, I tell them about our product and how well it works and how much I use it and how much they'll like it and how good it is and how much better it is than the competition and everything else. And he said, stop. No, that's not how you sell. When you meet a prospect, you don't even know if they're a prospect or a suspect. If they're a suspect, you're not going to spend half your life developing an intimate relationship with them. What you have to do is you have to ask questions. And the first rule for success comes from asking the right questions and asking the right follow-up questions and thinking it through the questions. So he said, let me show you what I mean. So we're sitting on a bench in a park across the street from our offices. And he took out a little pad of paper, about a stenographer's pad. And he said, here's a question, for example. You'd ask, well, what are you doing now in this area with regard to our product or service? And he would listen carefully, nod and smile, take notes. And he said, well, and what are your plans in this area for the long term? And how is everything going? How's everything working for you? And so he walked through a series of questions. I see them like a funnel with the general questions moving down, down, down. And the 7th question was, how soon would you like to get started with our product? And it was so persuasive. I wanted to buy my product from him because it was such a good presentation. And I thought, wow. And I wrote things down. I always wrote things down. And time to go back to work. For the rest of the afternoon, I went out and instead of talking, I was this irresistible desire to talk. I asked questions and listened closely to the answers and leaned forward. And instead of people saying, well, I'm too busy, I'm in a hurry right now, why don't you call me back? Let me think it over and so on. They said, well, why don't you come in for a couple of seconds? And I just began asking questions. And I began making sales. And then I went back to Pete and I said, well, Pete, what else could I do to be more successful? He said, well, have you read any books on selling? And I still remember, I said, are there books on selling? Because I love to read. I love to read anything. Oh, he said, yeah, there's some of the best books ever written. And I said, where would I get them? He said, any bookstore. So I remember going down to the bookstore. I still remember that day. And there's a whole section of books on selling. And I bought my first book. I didn't have very much money. I bought my first book and I took it home and I began to read it over and over again. And then I did something that changed my life. Is I didn't realize until afterwards, but I would read something that was a good idea, good question to ask, or a good way of asking for more information or asking for the sale. And whatever it was, if it was good, I would go out and try it out immediately. I would try it out immediately. And here's what I learned. Nothing works. Nothing works, at least not the first time, at least not the second or third time. The first time you try something new, it won't work. Now, what is the natural tendency of most people? Is they just quit. They try it once. If it doesn't work, if there's not bells going off and drums beating and everything else, then they just quit and they go back to what they were doing, which wasn't working either. So what I did is I decided that I got a new idea. I would try it 5 or 10 times before I gave up on it. And that changed my life. So the first thing I did is I started to read every day. I read 60 to 90 minutes every day and take notes. And then I would go out and I would practice what I had learned on my very first call, and my second call, and my third call. And my sales, which had been flat, started to go up and up and up and up and up. Within 1 year, I was earning 10 times as much as I'd ever earned in my life before. I'd gone from sleeping on the floor of a friend's small rooming house. I had my own furnished apartment. I had new clothes. I was the sales manager of my company. My boss came to me and said, look, whatever you're doing, teach it to all the other guys. So I began to give little sales seminars. I still do, as a matter of fact, with my sales organizations. Give a little sales seminar, and we pick one subject and we talk about it, and share questions and answers back and forth and so on. Then they would go out. I remember once when I was made the sales manager, I would sit my sales team. We had about 12 people, and we'd plan for the day, and we'd talk about getting appointments. We talk about asking questions and things like that. And then everybody would come back at 5 o'clock, and then we would review right around the room and review what everybody had done that day and what results they got and how successful they were and how happy they were. And I started doing this 5 and 6 days a week. And when I started to build sales organizations, the first thing, we all sit down, plan, prepare for the day. Everybody go out and sell all day and keep track, because they have to explain to me and to everybody else who they called on, what happened, what they said, what they didn't say, what the results were, and so on. And it was astonishing. Within a very short period of time, people who were just basically broke started to make sales. And as they made sales, they became more confident. As they became more confident, they became more aggressive. They became more aggressive. They started getting up earlier and working harder and staying later. And I have friends all over the world today from those early days who are now millionaires and multimillionaires, even multi-millionaires, because what they did is once they learned how to sell, soon they hired people to sell. Then they opened offices. Then they became the sole distributors of products and services. And then they opened territories. And it was just a dream. And so what I learned was that you can learn anything you need to learn to achieve any goal that you can set for yourself. So let's go right back to what we're talking about is every year, Sales and Marketing Management Magazine and other publications do research, and they do what is called self-reports. They call thousands of salespeople in a variety of industries, and they ask them, how many calls are you making each day? And from 1928 until today, the number is still 2 calls a day. That means half are above, half are below. So if you want to double your income, you just simply start to keep careful track of how many new people you speak to each day about your business. And then you set a goal to speak to twice as many. And so let's say you're talking to 2, so your goal is to talk to 4. And if you speak to 4 people, as I mentioned, I started off, I graduated from high school, but in my 30s, I went to a university MBA program in the nights, evenings, weekends, and so on. And one of the courses I had to take was probability theory. And probability theory, you had to learn differential calculus to take probability theory. You had to pass probability theory to get your degree. And so I had to take it twice. I had to hire a tutor. It was so difficult. Probability theory and differential calculus is what the scientists use at the top institutes. Anyway, one of the things you learn is probability theory. And what I learned from that was that everything in the world is probabilities. Everything is probabilities. The discovery of probability theory about 300 years ago by a monk working at a monastery in Switzerland. He just came up with 32 different ways that you could calculate the odds. And he developed these into formulas, and people began to use them. Every insurance company is based on probability theory. All the banks, all the stock markets, all the financial movement of all the monies in the world, all the business programs, they're all based on probabilities. And the wonderful thing that you learn is that you can control the probabilities. You can control the probabilities. And if you can control the probabilities, you can control the results. So let's say that you want to double your income and eventually you want to become a millionaire. That's good. Make that as a decision, write it down, and I'll talk to you about how to make a plan for it. And then just go to work and just keep working at it and keep learning what you need to learn. And that's what I did. And my sales went up and up, and my income went up and up, and so on. So In terms of probability theory, if you double the number of people that you speak to by law, not by hope or wish or guess, by law, you'll double your income. And I have had this experience so many times where a person would come up to me at a seminar, and I'd been in that city speaking a year or 2 years before, and they tell me the same story, or now they send me an email. And the story is, when I heard that, I said, this is a bunch of nonsense. This is a bunch of California BS. This guy's just blowing smoke in my ears. It's not possible to just double your income by doubling your number of calls that you make. And then there's one guy, I've heard this many times, he said, well, I decided to prove that you were wrong. I decided to prove that you were wrong. And by come, I was going to do it. I was going to do exactly what you said. I was going to write down all of my activities, and I was going to keep track, and I was going to speak to 4 new people each day, and I was going to write down what they said and what happened as a result of the call. And you know something? 7 days later, I was earning twice as much. I couldn't believe it. I'd been in my field for 10 or 12 years and struggling away and working away and complaining about how tough business is. And within a week, I was earning twice as much as I'd ever earned before. And so does it work? Yes. Does it work 100% of the time? Yes. All it requires is for you to work, and you'll double your income. So coming back to what we were talking about earlier, is that the highest paid work that you do is thinking about who you are and what you want and where you're going. And the reason why this is so important is because of a word called consequences. Now, consequences are the result of what happens or what doesn't happen if you do or do not do something. And consequences is one of the most important words of all. I am today the best-selling author in the world on time management. My publisher told me last month that my sales have now reached 2.5 million copies in 50 languages, which sounds pretty impressive. It's impressive to me anyway. And why? Because I studied time management for 30 years before I began to write down. And basically my book is called Eat That Frog, 21 Great Ways to Stop Procrastinating and Get More Things Done Faster. And the book has come out and gone into language after language after language. And we're just coming out with a whole new version of it called Eat That Frog for Students. And it's to show students how to get top grades and get into top schools rather than people around them doing it. And the book is a complete rewrite of the old book, and it'll probably sell another 2.5 million copies. In the US today, 3 million people graduate from college or university each year. So if we only get 10% of those, then this will sell millions of copies. And it's all about how to get more things done faster. And that's what I learned in terms of time management, is that if you do what other successful people do over and over again, you soon get the same results they do. And we were talking about that a little while ago. It's not a miracle. It's not an accident. It's absolutely predictable. Chris and I talked about this last week. Anyway, so I started writing 4 books a year. And why? Is because my books were selling, and publishers were actually phoning me and asking me, please write a book for me. I had the biggest publisher in the world call me up about 3 years ago and say, they came through an agent. They said, we would like to talk to you. And I said, great. I mean, that's for a writer to be approached by the biggest publisher in the world. Wow. So I said, sure. They said, we'd like you to write 2 books for us. We want to be your publisher. Well, that's very unusual, because if you know anything about writing books, you'll find that people have to work so hard for months and even years, and then they have to send out copies of their manuscript and try to find somebody who will even pay attention to them. Here, they phoned me and made an appointment, in this office. And so I said, great. I said, what would you like me to write about? And they said, what have you got? Now, this has not been unusual. I've had a couple of publishers call me and say, we think that if you write a book on this subject, it will sell well, because I write a lot of practical stuff in my books. And so I did, and it did. And so my name is out. I've got a rep that if Brian writes a book, it will sell well. you'll make profits. And publishers, just like everybody else, like to make profits. So I said, well, I have two books that I've been thinking about, and I explained the two books to them, and they said, we like them. They're good subjects. Could you do a proposal for each of them? And I said, sure. I teach this, by the way. Writing a proposal is not very complicated, but without it, nobody will pay attention to you. You know that something like 65% of adults dream of writing a book someday, and less than 1% will ever do it because they don't know how to write a proposal. It's so dumb. And writing a proposal is very simple. So anyway, so I wrote two proposals. I sent them in. They came back to me the following week and said, we like them. Here's an advance check for a lot of money. And how soon can you have it done? And I said, well, I publish 4 books a year. So I have to have a 6-month window between books, if that's okay by you. So this is January. So if you can publish the first one in June, July, and the second one the end of the following year, the end of the year, would that be okay? And they said, yeah, that's okay. And they wrote up a contract with all of that and sent it over and got it signed. And I wrote the 2 books, and they published the 2 books, and the books are worldwide bestsellers. And the first one was called Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life, which is very profoundly important. But if you change your thinking without changing anything else, nothing will happen. But if you change your thinking and change your actions, your life will transform. But the other book was called Get Smart. And I had several titles, but I like that title, Get Smart. And I took 10 ways of thinking that are practiced by the top people, the people who earn the most money and achieve the most success in the shortest period of time. And people write to me and they said, that changed my life, changed my life, changed my life. So what I want to do is I want to give you 3 of those methods of thinking before we go on. And the first method is one of my favorites. It's called The Difference Between Slow Thinking and Fast Thinking. And it was written by a man named Richard Kahneman. He got a Nobel Prize in economics for his work. And what he said basically is that the primary type of thinking that we use is fast thinking. And fast thinking is like moving through traffic. You move quickly. You don't take much time to think about it. And slow thinking is where you go slowly, a little bit at a time. He said, now, fast thinking is the correct way of thinking for most things. You don't have to spend half your life deciding whether to change lanes. However, slow thinking is required whenever there are big potential consequences. Whenever the choice that you're making has big consequences, whether you do the right thing or not, whether you go left or right. So therefore, whenever the consequences are big, when there's a lot of money involved, is what you do is you slow down your thinking, slow down, and you think slowly and carefully. And you think about what's likely to happen. Now, the mark of the superior thinking is they think not only about what is likely to happen, but then what is likely to happen. What are the secondary consequences of your taking action? One of the best books I ever read on this subject was a man by the name named Frederick Bastiat, 2 centuries ago. And he talked about how the primary consequences of every action are good. Other than that, you wouldn't take them. I mean, why would you do anything if you didn't think you were going to get some benefit from it? But what are the secondary consequences? What is likely to happen? And then, what are the tertiary consequences? What's likely to happen after that? And Milton Friedman, the Nobel Prize winner, said, your ability to accurately predict the results of your thinking and your actions is the mark of the superior mind. So if you take your time and you slow down, and you just take time out and you think, what's likely to happen? When I was coming up in my 30s, I put together a shopping center development. And I ran out of money, I ran out of everything. I got an introduction to the head of a huge company, billion-dollar company, 200 companies. And I went to him and I offered to sell him my shopping center, all developed, for 25% of the value. The value I felt was $3 million, and I would sell it to him for 25% if he put up the money. Well, it's an interesting story, but I had done all my homework. He sent me to see his lawyers and his accountants. They went over all the books carefully. They double checked every claim that I'd made and so on. And they came back and they said, it's good. This is a good deal. If he'll do it for 25%, it's a good deal. So they took over 100% of all the bookkeeping, the accounting, the money, and everything else. And I built the shopping center, and the shopping center opened on time, fully leased, by the way. I had a Safeway in one end and a major liquor store in the other end, and a whole bunch of great companies in between. And the big boss, I can call him, the big boss was impressed with me and said, how would you like to come and work for me as my assistant? And this man was so highly respected. He was so wealthy. He owned 200 companies, as I said. He owned businesses of all kinds. And for him to offer me a job as his assistant was overwhelming. And I said, I would love to do it. How would it work? And he said, well, you tell me how much you would charge, and we'll think about it, and we'll make a decision. And bottom line was, I went to work for him on a daily rate so that I was not an employee, and my income and taxes and everything were different. And then what he would do is he would give me tasks. He would give me projects to work on. And then I would come back and he would give me advice and guidance and say, no, do more of this, less of that, and so on. I say, okay. And I basically worked for him for 2 years at his knee. And then he sold out his company for almost $1 billion. And then I went on. But in that 2 years, I learned so much about life. And he liked me. He liked me. So we would spend 2 or 3 evenings a week after work. Everybody was gone. He would call me in my little office. I'd come down to his office, and we would just talk. Now, the reason I mention this is because this man was famous. He had a photographic memory. He could look at a contract. I saw him do this. He could look at a contract, read it from the back, flip the pages, and discuss it with me 6 months later and remember every word of the contract. He always took notes. He always sat there. He always had his hand extended. And he was taking notes as we spoke, always taking notes. And I thought, that's amazing. The guy is brilliant. He's almost a billionaire. He's got 200 companies, and he writes down everything, takes notes. And so, believe me, I got so much benefit from this relationship. And then I would come to him and I'd say, look, I've been working on this project, and I think we should do this, and I think we should do that. And so he'd say, wait a minute, slow down. What about this and what about that? And what about this and what about that? And sometimes I would have the answers, and sometimes I hadn't thought about them. And then he would say, remember this. He would say, well, let me think about it for a couple of days and we'll get back together again. But we want to get started. No, just let me think about it. And this man was so smart, and he was so brilliant. Yet he would take time, he would write down notes, and he'd take 2 or 3 days, and then he would call me and say, I've been thinking about that project, and I want to talk to you about it. And I'd go in and sit down, and he would say, this is what we're going to do. I mean, it was beautiful. It was like one of those early IBM computers, And he would say, we'll do this and this and this, and then we'll do that and that and this and this, and then we'll do this and this and this. And I'm writing furiously, and he was always right. He was always right. And we generated tens of millions of dollars in profit. I probably earned more profit with him and through him and for his companies than I made for myself in years and years and years and years of hard work. But my point is this: the big boss was brilliant, smart, prepared, educated, had more than 200 companies, and he had studied every one of those companies and those industries. He had a $265 million banking corporation. He had several huge condominium complexes. He owned a chain of restaurants. He had a complete complex for petrochemical development. I mean, he was different, all kinds of different types of businesses, and yet he always took the time to think, and he always wrote things down. And so I just passed that on to you because I learned that, sort of like sitting at his knee. I learned to do the same thing. And the cost to me of ignoring that lesson has been a fortune, where I got into something too quickly and I didn't take the time to think about it. Here's the rule. And I've written all kinds of stuff on problem solving and decision making. And here's the rule. If it is not necessary to decide, it is necessary not to decide at this time. Wow. So in other words, if you don't have to make a decision, don't make a decision. Put it off. Punt on the decision. Put it off. Keep delaying it. Keep delaying the decision. And here's the second discovery. The longer that you let a decision percolate in your brain, it's very much like tea steeping in hot water. The more it percolates in your brain, the better will be the quality of your decision when you make a decision. And you'll find for the rest of your life, the most successful people are people who go slowly. I have worked now with many, many different multimillionaires, multi-hundred millionaires, billionaires, multi-billionaires, all over the world as a consultant, as a strategic planner, as a marketing planner, and so on. So I've had a chance to watch them in their interactions. Sometimes I would just sit. I remember sitting in the office of one of my billionaire clients, and he would bring me in to just talk about different things. He would run past some of his projects to get my initial reaction. And then people would come in during the day and they'd say, what about this and what about that? And I would kind of sit off to the side and I would just watch how he worked with his staff and how he worked with bankers, how he worked with business partners. It was such a wonderful experience. But the critical thing is that they go slow. When I was young, I used to think that if you make fast decisions and take action, that means that you're somehow smart. No, if the consequences are big enough, go slow, pull back, take it easy, take a deep breath, think about it over the weekend. Don't rush, and you'll always make a better decision. And sometimes just one small change that occurred to you 2 days after you had to make the decision changed your life forever. And you look back and remember that one change that we decided to do this rather than that in the final decision was life changing. Anyway, so I learned from the big boss that the smartest of all people, first of all, he was self-made. He started off, came from a small family. I went to college, and then he went to medical school, and he actually became a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons. He became the chief surgeon of a major general hospital in the city where I lived. And he was paid very well. He was quite successful. He was actually brilliant as a surgeon. And he took the money, he held on to it, and he just carefully invested it in different business opportunities. And the stories of some of the things he got into, even to this day, I just shake my head. But anyway, so there's different types of thinking. The first is slow thinking versus fast thinking. When in doubt, think slowly. Take the time, take a deep breath, pull back, write it down, write down all the details of the potential decision before you get into it. The second type of thinking is called informed thinking versus uninformed thinking. And one of the things that we've found is that the most successful people in every business, including this business, take the time to think through in detail all the details of what they're doing before they make a decision. They take a lot of time gathering details. They ask a lot of questions. They phone people. Some of the wealthy people that I've worked with will actually hire a consultant who specializes in a particular area and pay them $500 an hour to just sit there and take questions. And I know I sit there and they bring them in and they sit down and they say, look, I'm working on this project or that project. Could you give me your reactions to these possibilities? And they would just throw out a series of possibilities. More of this, do that, and so on. And just pick their brains. But once he picked their brains, then he owned their intellectual capital and he wouldn't need them again. So well-informed thinking will save you from making mistakes. It will enable you to do more things right and fewer things wrong. And over time, there's a basic rule in business that I learned is that when you start off, you make nothing but mistakes. It's mistake after mistake after mistake. This is the process of learning. There's no other way to learn but to make a mistake and learn from it. The worst thing you can do is make a mistake and not learn from it. So make a mistake and learn from it. And I always do this. When you make a mistake, and I've made some terrible mistakes, I'll write down, what did I learn from this experience? And I'll challenge myself to come up with 20 lessons that I learned. Write them down, write them down, write them down. In fact, if you want to become rich, I'll give you a very simple technique to become rich. It's guaranteed to work. I call them the two magic questions. Magic question number one is right after any kind of presentation, any kind of meeting, anything, whether it's been successful or otherwise, ask yourself the question, what did I do right in this situation, in this meeting? What did I do right? And then challenge yourself to come up with 20 things that you did right. The first time you do this, by the way, it's going to be very, very difficult. The second question you ask is, what would I do differently next time? And then challenge yourself to write down 20 answers. Write it down, write it down, write it down. And you'll be quite astonished. Next time you have a similar situation, like you make a presentation and you'll do some things right, you'll do some things wrong. But the importance of these questions is that the answers are both positive. What did I do right? And what that does, by writing it down, you imprint it into your subconscious mind so that it's always available to you. And the next time you go into that situation, your subconscious mind will immediately give you the things that you did right. And then what did I do? What would I do differently? Again, the answers are positive. I remember I was booked to speak to one of what they call the mega seminars, 15,000 people. And eventually we got up to 20,000, 25,000. Anyway, 15,000 people, 40 minutes. And I wanted to do a great job because I wanted to be rebooked, speaking to this size of an audience. So I did this exercise and I wrote down everything that I could think of to make this an excellent seminar. I came out with 20 ideas. I went out, I gave the seminar, it was well received, and I went back immediately afterwards. I wrote down, what did I do right? What would I do differently? Next time I was hired to speak for them, I reviewed my notes and I get even better. By the third seminar, I was getting standing ovations from 10 and 20,000 people. And it was very helpful for my speaking career to get standing ovations from promoters who found now that they can fill a room just by using my name, because people have been to my seminars in the past. So if you want to stomp on the accelerator of your personal growth and development, a piece of paper and a pen is all you need. Take it out and write it down. Everything that you could think of that you could do in this coming situation. And then afterwards, what did I do right? What would I do differently? You will find if you only do this once, it will change your life. If you do it every single time you have a meeting or you have a meeting with potential distributors, if you keep writing this down, you're going to become smarter and better faster than you ever thought possible. And remember, it's not what did I do wrong? Where did I make a slip? Where did I go wrong? It's always what did I do right? What would I do differently? So anyway, so that's the second way of thinking, is informed thinking versus uninformed thinking. And the third way of thinking is long-term thinking versus short-term thinking. And long-term thinking is what requires goals. And you'll find that the most successful people in life have written goals. In fact, they say that only 3% of adults have written goals, and everyone else works for them. If you have written goals, you'll increase your income 10 times in the next 1 to 2 years. It's just literally astonishing. And I discovered goals. I had 3 turning points in my life that will be of help to you. The first turning point, I still remember it when I was 21 and living in a little room, 1-room apartment. During the winter, it was cold as death outside, and the room had one little bed that folded up in it and one little kitchen, and it was much too cold to go outside. And I remember sitting there in the room, and I'm 21 years old. I'm thousands of miles from home. Didn't graduate from high school. I'm working as a construction laborer, which means that you haul heavy stuff from point A to point B. And I said to myself, I said, this is my life. This is my life. I still remember because it stands out to me. And I said to myself, I said, I am responsible for my life from this day forward. And that changed my life forever. And I subsequently learned in studying the life stories of successful people is that they all accept responsibility. And they look at accepting responsibility as the turning point in their lives. It's sort of like you are a child until you come to this sill and you step over the sill and accept responsibility, and you are now an adult. But until you accept responsibility and stop blaming your parents and stop blaming your upbringing and stop blaming everything else, until you accept 100% responsibility, you remain a child and you have no chance for success. So I find that I read and study and I get letters. People write me letters and they say, that insight changed my life forever. He said, I never thought of it like that. And I write about it in my books. I teach it in my programs. Just say, I am responsible. I am responsible. I am responsible. Here's an interesting discovery, and I've spent thousands of hours on this, but the most important thing in life is positive emotions. Positive emotions mean that you take a generally positive outlook toward your life and your work. Now, that means, because nature abhors a vacuum, that means that if you get rid of negative emotions, all that will be left will be positive emotions. And I put 4,000 hours into studying this area of psychology and metaphysics. And what I found was that all negative emotions come from blame. You cannot be negative unless you are blaming someone or something else for something in your life that you're not happy with. So the instant that you stop blaming, you become completely positive. Your mind clears completely, and you become a force to be reckoned with. And the way that you eliminate negative emotions is simply by saying the words, I am responsible. I am responsible. I have taught this to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. And to me, it's the great miracle, because when you accept responsibility, you put yourself in complete charge of your own life, complete charge of your life. That means from now on, everything that happens is completely up to you. You own yourself. You own the future. You become powerful as opposed to powerless. Well, the second thing, the turning point in my life, was when I discovered goals. Is when you accept responsibility, the next question is, responsible for what? And the answer is goals. Is you have to be absolutely clear about what it is you want and what you have to do to get it and the order of priority. There was a great book written a few years ago, and it was called it'll come to me in a second, my mind went blank. But basically, it's writing down everything you have in sequence, in order, and then doing the things you have to do in sequence. It's called the something principle. My mind just went blank for a second. But it's so important. It means once you accept responsibility, you decide what you're going to be responsible for. And then you write down your goals and you make a decision on which goals you're going to accomplish and in what order or sequence of importance. And then you start working on it. And the third thing that I learned that changed my life, and I call these the golden triangle, is continuous learning. And Chris and other people will say the same thing. Continuous learning changes your life. One new idea, one new concept, one new skill can change your life. In fact, I came to the conclusion a long time ago that each person is probably just one skill away from doubling their income. One skill away from doubling their income. So one of the things that I do is I say, imagine you had a magic wand and you could wave a magic wand, and overnight you could become absolutely excellent in any one skill. What one skill would help you the most to double your income? What one skill would help you the most to double your income? And you know what? The answer will just pop. It'll just pop out at you. And you know always exactly what that skill is. And people have this idea that, you have to be especially smart and you have to be educated and you have to be intelligent and so on. No. What you have to do is identify the skill, because you can learn any skill you need to learn to achieve any goal that you can set for yourself. So really, these are the keys to success. Accept responsibility, no excuses, no blaming, and decide exactly what you want and write it down. And then number 3, continuous learning. Just keep reading and reading and reading and upgrading your knowledge and skills. I have studied, I've got a book that I've been planning to publish on it. It's the success habits of millionaires and billionaires and how you can develop them as well. And one of the things I found is that millionaires and billionaires read 60 minutes a day on average. They read a book a week on average. Bill Gates reads 2 books a week. And then he writes up a précis. He goes through the books and he writes up the list of the best points, and then he publishes them on his website. And so if you want to learn what Bill Gates is reading, and what he got the most out of those books, just go to Bill Gates' website and he tells you. And he's been doing this for decades. He just happens to be the first or second richest person in the history of the world. So that's a good sign. That's a good sign. If you're going to listen to people who started with very little and are now worth $100 billion. And just keep learning and writing it down, and keep asking what one skill will help me the most. I remember when I started off selling and I started to learn about selling, I realized that my worst skill was closing the sale. Is I would be fine and positive and cheerful and everything right up to the asking the person to make a decision. And then I would paralyze. And I still remember I'd say, well, what do you want to do? With my big, eating smile. Well, what do you want to do? They say, well, I want to think it over. I want to take a look at it. Leave me some stuff. Get back to me next year. Blah, blah, blah. I finally learned that let me think it over means goodbye forever. We'll never meet again. And so what I decided is I would learn how to ask for the order. But I didn't believe in high pressure sales. I believed in being able to ask people intelligently and warmly in a friendly way to make a decision. So I studied more than 100 techniques and methods and I wrote them down. And then I went out and I tried them out. I would learn one or two methods each morning, and then I would go and I would try them out. And if I wasn't comfortable with them, I wouldn't use them until finally I developed about 24 techniques. And then years later, when I started to speak, I did a seminar called 24 Techniques for Closing the Sale and filled the rooms. And then I wrote a book on it, and then an audio, and then a video. And it's now the most popular single program on sales closing techniques ever written. And you can get it on Amazon, and you can get it in Audible. You can get it anywhere you want. But if one of the things that scares you about being in this business is asking for the order, then what I found was that it has a backflow effect, and it makes you afraid of even calling people in the first place, even talking to new people in the first place, because you know that if you go through the entire process of talking to them, at the very end, you're going to go into paralysis. So actually, your fear of failure at the end actually stops you from questioning at the beginning. When you get to the point where you're very comfortable at each part of the sales process, then you just want to see more people, just want to talk to more people, want to ask more questions, talk to more people, make more sales, earn more money. So we could go on like this forever, Chris. I just get onto a roll. But the one thing we know about my daily choice is that it is one of the best business opportunities in the world today. And that each person listening to this basically has within their hands an opportunity to make all the money that you want and to get better and better and more successful. And the better you get, the less time it takes you to earn a certain amount of money. You get better and better, and it takes less and less time to make more and more money. And eventually you reach the point where you become an inspiration to others and you teach other people how to do these same things. The most important thing, Chris and I were talking about this, the most important thing in this business is that you love the product. This product is very good. I use it every single night. Chris sent it to me and I use it every night. And I've tried out similar products from similar companies, and they're just as good as if you poured them down the drain. But my wife and I use this product every single night, and it is a great product. So you have the foundation to build a great business. You have a product that you can be proud of, and your job is simply to get better and better at introducing other people to your product. Basically, that's what you do. You do not sell, you basically help. You're a helper, and you help people to learn how to use this product for themselves and their family, and then to help other people to sleep better and to feel better by doing the same thing. And you'll find that the more time you spend not selling, the more sales you make. So eventually you reach the point where you're just really not even thinking about selling. You're just thinking about helping people improve the quality of their life and their work with the same products that you're using yourself. And at that, I will stop, Chris. If you got any comments or anything that you'd like to say?
Man, I could talk for an hour after that training because I got so much value. And I think a lot of it is not just the credibility you bring to our profession and to what we do, but just to see as you were sharing your story, I took a whole bunch of notes. My favorite thing you said the whole entire call: work your ass off. And that's the truth. You talk about, at least for me anyway, you talked about how you grew up and you worked on a farm doing hay. I literally got done putting second crop up this morning. And I actually did it backwards. I didn't work on a farm so I could pay for college, or I worked in network marketing so I could afford my ranching and farming habit. and I also dropped out of high school, and it's just so awesome to see guys like yourself that's paved the way for guys like me and so many people on this call to go and really chase their dreams. And it doesn't matter your background. And like you said, if you take the excuses out of it and become responsible for your own actions, you're going to win. And there's only one way not to win, and that's if you quit. So, Brian, Mr. Tracy, thank you so much for being on this call this afternoon. And this is going to be on replay for all you My Daily Choice affiliates. It's going to be in your back offices. You'll be able to have access to this awesome, very matter-of-fact training for the rest of your days here at My Daily Choice. And again, Brian Tracy, thank you so much. If you have anything you'd like to say to end the call, that would be awesome. And then I'll close out from there.
Well, the more you hit it right on the head. Not only do you have to work really hard, if you're going to do better than the average person, you're going to have to work much harder than the average person. And sooner or later, you're going to have to work harder if you want to be a big success. So you might as well get on with it. Don't say, well, next year I'll really work hard. The starting point is now. The second thing is that successful people like yourself never quit. They just never quit. They never give up. And I have 4 children. And when I was raising my children, I would teach them over and over again. I would say, one thing I know about you, this is when they were little kids, 6, 7, is you never give up. And they say, oh, Daddy, that's not true. What about when we lose it in sports? And I said, that's just temporary. You never give up. You never give up. You never give up. And I remember I would just feed this because children are inordinately influenced by what their parents tell them, positive or negative, over and over again. And so one rule is to never say anything negative to your children about your children unless you want it to be true. You never say anything negative about yourself. You don't say, oh, I'm a Dutz, or I keep forgetting things. Don't ever say anything about yourself that you don't want to be true. And with your children, you tell them what you want to be true. And that is that you never give up. You never give up. And you say to yourself, I never give up. I used to do a little exercise in my audiences. And my audiences averaged for about 2 or 3 decades, averaged about 1,600 people with gusts up to 2 and 3 and 4,000. And I would say the most important requirement for success in sales is for you to become unstoppable. Unstoppable. So how do you become unstoppable? Well, there is a technique. And we said earlier that you become what you think about most of the time. So you also become what you say to yourself most of the time. So from now on, whenever you have a setback or a difficulty of any kind at all, you immediately cancel it by saying, wait a minute, I am unstoppable. I am unstoppable. Now, say it. So I'd have the audience say, I am unstoppable. And they go, I am unstoppable. I said, no, don't suck your thumb. Say it like you mean it. And they'd say, I am unstoppable. I said, no, geez. I said, say it like you mean it. Shout it. I am unstoppable. And everybody would say, I am unstoppable. And then everybody would laugh. I say, from now on, whenever you have a situation and things are going against you and you feel discouraged, just say to yourself, wait a minute, I am unstoppable. I never quit. I never quit. I am unstoppable. And you know what happens is that locks into your subconscious mind and it becomes automatic. And from then on, you will look at every conceivable way to achieve the goal. But stopping or quitting is already off the table. That's not an option. That is off the table. So now what do I do? What steps do I take? What actions do I take? I get up earlier, work harder, stay later, upgrade my skills. But the fact is that quitting is off the table because you are what? And everybody would cheer, I am unstoppable. Yes. And that is the one quality that will make you a great person. If you never quit, then the only alternative is that you must be a big success. You must be a big success. And I say nothing can stop you. In the whole world, nothing can stop you. And I say, oh, wait a minute. There is one person who could stop you. There is one person who can stop you from being a big success. And then I'll say, and who would that be? And everybody in the room smiles and points at me. It would be me. That's right. So if you don't stop yourself, then nothing can stop you. You are the only person that can stop you from being a big success. And you think, wow, that's a great concept. And it's perfectly true. It's absolutely 100% true. So anyway, that's what I would leave our friends with, is that if they don't give up, then the only alternatives, two roads: the road of giving up or the road of great success. If they don't give up, then they're going to be great success. And they might as well get on with it and increase the number of people that you talk to. It's always numbers. It's frequency of activities, frequency of calls, frequency of people you talk to, write to, phone, Zoom with, and everything else. It's just frequency because of this wonderful law of probabilities. It guarantees that if you don't give up and you keep on trying, you absolutely must be a big success.
Yep, I agree 100%. And you know, in our industry, as we close here in the network marketing profession, I actually believe they've got it spelled out wrong. It should be work marketing net, because the work comes first to do the marketing, and then you create the net. And so many people think they should see the net before the work. And back to everything you've been talking about the whole entire afternoon, is it does take work. You do have to, everybody's still posting in the comments, I am unstoppable. I hope you can see that, because that blew up, that chat, when you were talking about that. And once again, Mr. Tracy, thank you so much for spending your afternoon here with all the awesome family here at My Daily Choice. And thanks for your wisdom, your knowledge, and your insight into what we do. And I can't thank you enough for being on this afternoon.
It's been a great pleasure, and I am taking My Daily Choice every day. Every day.
If you need more, you know how to get a hold of me. We'll keep you in stock.
Don't you worry.
Looking forward to it. All right, family, that's it for this awesome Tuesday corporate training. We're also going to be doing next Tuesday. We're going to have an awesome leader. Lindsay Tronello is going to be on, and we're going to be crushing some more insight on how to build My Daily Choice and do amazing things. And make sure your teams get this replay. Make sure you look at it in the back office. Thank you, Josh and Jenna and corporate staff. How cool is it that as a company, our founders bring on people like Brian Tracy and everybody out from Fraser Brooks to Eric Worre to Ed Milet, everybody that's been on, they're just pouring into us and making us be the best we can be. So take advantage of all this. Yes, thank Josh and Jenna in the comments. They're home having an awesome time with their baby and their family. And we're going to see y'all next Tuesday. I can't wait for next Tuesday training. And in the meantime, make sure you're registered for convention. Your teams are registered for convention. It's literally 39, 40 days away, and it's time to blow this thing up. This is the right time in My Daily Choice. Family, I love you. We can't wait for next week, and we'll see you all then. Have an awesome week. Ta-ta for now.